Hi, everyone. So, I've asked you to do readings on Christianity this week, and I want to make a few concluding remarks. And I think the main question that we should be asking is how come monasticism became so popular and so important in Christianity? I mean, other religions have different forms of monasticism as well. But really, monasticism, monasteries, monks became a very significant feature of the Christian religion, especially in the Middle Ages. I mean, when you think about the Middle Ages, you think monasteries, you think monks. That's one of the things that one thinks about. So, how come it became so popular in the Middle Ages, and specifically from the 6th century onwards, from the early Middle Ages? Three main reasons. First of all, monasticism gave individuals the opportunity to gain huge fame and a very significant reputation in their communities. Why? Because the ability to pursue asceticism, to self-deny oneself, was considered as a form of martyrdom. You are sacrificing yourself. You are sacrificing the very natural, basic needs of a human being for good food, for fun, for human interaction, and for sex, quite frankly. You're sacrificing all of that in order to pursue your beliefs. And in fact, it brought the individual monks such great fame that after they were dead, some of them became still important to their communities. The remains of their physical bodies were believed to carry a special force that could protect the community even after their death. Their remains were considered blessed. So that's what we refer to as relics. The second reason why monasticism became so popular in Christianity is that from the third century onwards, sorry, from the fourth century onwards, when Christianity becomes the official religion of the Roman Empire, there is no more opportunities for martyrdom. Now, why do I call it an opportunity? After all, being a martyr kind of sucks. Because, as I mentioned to you last time, although it was very difficult for Christians, at the same time, it brought new followers to this religion. The Romans who stood at the side and looked at these people who were willing to die for the benefit of their beliefs just admired these people. They admired Christians. So martyrdom during the first 3 centuries of the existence of Christianity actually helped Christianity kind of push forward and gain more and more believers. But from the 4th century onwards, Christianity is no longer persecuted. If anything, it starts persecuting other religions. So there are no more martyrs. But becoming a monk, in a way, is still doing martyrdom. It was just considered a living form of martyrdom. You don't actually die, but you do die symbolically because you give up on all the kind of things that people who live in the secular world do. The second reason why monasticism became so important in Christianity, and specifically in the early Middle Ages, is that from the 3rd century onwards, the western part of the Roman Empire is being invaded and attacked by Germanic tribes. As a result of that, the cities fall apart, law and order falls apart, and there is no real centralized government that can control the situation. In this kind of circumstances, in this kind of reality, suddenly monasteries become a safe haven for people. So to us, it might look as if living in a monastery was a very harsh kind of life, but for people in that period, it actually provided a relief from what was happening outside of the monasteries, specifically because monasteries were very self-sufficient. Monks grew their own food, they even grew grapes and made their own wine, they grew herbs for medicine, anything that would help them be detached from the outside world. So they were self-sufficient, which meant that people could survive there quite well, even if centralized government was no longer functioning. So these are the main three reasons why monasticism became so important and so significant in Christianity, and specifically in the Middle Ages. Now, as you know, Benedict is a very important figure in the history of Christian monasticism. Benedict appears in the middle of the 6th century, and he promotes a new kind of monasticism that, believe it or not, is actually more lax, less severe, less military style than the monasticism that preceded him. There are 3 vows that he requires all of his monks to make. It is the vow of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Poverty, because Jesus preached poverty, and this is what the Gospels are about. Chastity, because we're talking about asceticism, right? Denying, self-denial. So sex is a big no-no. And then obedience. I talked about how it's important to understand Roman society and culture when we're talking about the origins of the Middle Ages. Well, here is one example of why it's so relevant. We emphasized how in Roman culture, patriarchy and hierarchy are very prominent features of the structure of that society. This also pertains to monasticism. The monks have to obey completely the abbot, the head of their community, the father, so to speak. So we see here an emulation of the kind of hierarchy, which is patriarchy, that existed outside the monasteries. We see an emulation of that in the monasteries. So in order to understand that, you have to understand the connection with Roman society. Another thing that is important to notice about the kind of monasticism that Benedict promoted is that he really keeps his monks busy. They're busy for every minute, every single minute of the day. Why? You really don't want a bunch of dudes kind of roaming around and having too much time to think about all the stuff that they might be doing and they're not really doing. You want them to be occupied and busy. Which leads me to the last point that I want to emphasize, and that's how suddenly manual labor becomes a noble thing almost in the rule of Saint Benedict. It's not only prayer and study that the monks have to do, it's also manual labor. They work with their hands, they grow stuff, they clean. Manual labor was not a noble thing in Roman society, and here's a difference between the kind of community that monasticism promoted and the kind of values that it promoted and the society from which these people came from. So tomorrow is the 4th of July. We're not going to meet. There are no readings. I'm giving you the day off. I hope you have a wonderful time, and I'll meet you again next week. Bye-bye. Take care.